Hey, a big hangout, everybody. Whoa, I was caught doing something else. Ah, happy Thursday. Oh man, I got a pretty good stream, but this one's going to be a long one, I think. So gonna try not to go into too much detail. But I always say that I always end up getting into too much detail. Actuator protocol is pretty deep, though. But before I do that, I'm going to break out a cigar, and I'm going to break it out in honor of the Pulsechain. So this is a surplus CAO cigar. We're talking $4, man. That's where I'm living. $4. This $15 stick stuff, not $16, not $30, not $100, but $4, and I got that on sale, man. But tell you the truth, it's a pretty good cigar. This one's actually a Maduro, so which is a little bit heavier type of smoke. So for those of you who come into this particular chat, you got questions about Actuator, let me know, drop in the chat. If afterwards, put the questions in, and of course you can go to the Actuator .finance site and go do research on Actuator. You can also go to their Telegram and ask questions. They're pretty responsive over there as far as Actuator and what it does and all the rest. And so it's a pretty interesting protocol. I think a lot of people are fading it at this point. And the reason why, just because the HEX price isn't high, right? So if HEX prices were higher, you might have a lot more people interested. There's also a lot of detail behind this one that goes, it's pretty deep, man. It's pretty deep. I'll use some of the terminology and you'll be like, what the hell are you talking about? So I'll try to stay high level with that. Having a hard time getting this one lit. Before we get going, I sent a note out to a couple of the guys from the Burn It All podcast show that we do. I hadn't heard from them. They're tied up with some things, I'm sure. There we go. Working on pumping all our bags, right? So why talk about Actuator now? Actuator's been around for about a year. So it's coming up on its 1-year anniversary. And as part of the Actuator system, they do have a token that's considered to be a revenue token called Actuator. It's Actuator itself. And every year, a certain amount is distributed. This year, 350 million have been distributed. But then next step up, it drops by about 29% for next year. It gets spread against more pools. And then the year after, it drops more and gets spread up against a bunch of different pools. And the revenue token, again, the Actuator token, a lot of people are handling it like a standard reward token. So an always sell token. You get it, and because you got it, and you're farming, LP, and because you're farming the LP, you get the reward token. In order to realize the gain, you're selling the Actuator token for something else that you like. So that's how it's been operating. But here's the thing: the asymmetrical side of this is, if you instead held on to Actuator and you deposit it into the vaults, you can earn, additional HTT tokens. And we'll get into that, because then that's how it's a revenue token. It's a revenue sharing protocol. So as more people get turned on to Actuator protocol and they mint HTTs, there's a 1% fee, and that 1% fee is distributed, and a portion of that distribution goes out to the people who stake the Actuator. And so today you'd be like, well, I've been doing this for a while and I've got it in there, and I've earned $100 100 HTTs. Well, at a penny, that doesn't sound like a lot, right? Because it's down there at the penny, 1 penny range or below. Most of the HTTs are at a discount, a pretty steep discount to HEX, anywhere from around 10% to right around 50%. But if you allow yourself to think forward into the future, maybe 4 years from now, 8 years from now, well, if HEX is $5, right? I mean, I know I'm kind of like doing moon mathy stuff, but if HEX is $5, well, now, 5 times 100 is a lot more than 5 times, 1 penny times 100, right? So quite a bit more. And so all of a sudden you can see where that could be a revenue generator all by itself. Not to mention all the games that you can play with. I say games, as far as economic strategies that you can play with the Actuator token. Now, I will say this before I start going through slides and whatnot. I'm not part of the team, right? They didn't tell me to do this. They didn't pay me to do it. None of that stuff, right? So I ain't got nothing like that going on. But I do have the tokens, and I'm interested. And I'm very much. I don't think the term applies anymore. I would say that I'm a strong supporter of HEX. I guess I'm not a HEX maxi. Or at least a HEX staking maxi anymore, because in my mind that would be HEX staking native only, right? Collect by com as a reward and boom, boom, right? But I'm exposed to all these other things. I've tried different things, but I have become convinced, and Richard mentioned this one time too, that he really had backed off the idea that at first he was thinking that, which is I think where a lot of us got this from, that wrapped stakes were not optimal, right? But they do open up, having a wrapped HEX stake opens up options and flexibility for you that you might not have before. And of course, we saw that with Hedron, and to date, we still don't have Hedron V2, but that didn't, and it hadn't worked out so far, right? Maybe it's going to change this cycle with Hedron. I say it didn't work out in that it didn't hold its price. But it works. I mean, when you do staking of any HEX, whether it's HSI or native, you do get Hedron as an extra reward. So that part of it works, and there is LP, and you can swap that Hedron for HEX. You just don't get a lot for it. So yeah. So that's kind of my thinking with it. So now I've kind of converted my thinking because I am doing Quattro Cinco staking. I've been alternating between HSIs and native stakes. Part of the reason for that, personal decision, right? I get to do what I want to do. Yeah, man, I might be 75, 80 years old. Am I really going to be running around wanting to custody a wallet? And maybe at some point I'm going to want to transfer those really, really long stakes to somebody else. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Now, for these guys in the protocol, from talking to the founders and all the rest, they haven't explicitly given me any information. So this is what about this part. I'm going to make this part up. I think Actuator right now is what we would consider a bootstrapping phase. Get liquidity set up, get the process set up, get the community set up, get the believers set up, all that type of thing. But I don't think Actuator itself, as far as product market fit, is directed at fully at existing hexagons. I think what it's really directed at is big money. That's what I think. I think it's set up for people who understand traditional markets and are perhaps in traditional markets looking for a place to come land in DeFi. Now, they may not know they're coming yet, but I think this is like an advanced scouting, right, to get this set up. So again, I'm not telling you guys go buy it, but I think you should know about it. You know, there's a lot of stuff I think we should know about. I guess you can't know about everything, but you know, but we'll get into it a little bit. I'll show you some of the curious things that you can do, and I have a couple of examples that I'll put out there as well. And so, yeah, so just real quick recap, coming up on the 1-year anniversary. During that period of time, you know, kicked off originally with something called HTT 3000, 5,000, and 7,000. Those correspond to redemption dates for HEX into the future. And so if you have any of those tokens on the HEX day 3000, if you had HEX HTT 3000, it's worth 1 HEX, redeemable for 1 HEX. You have a 5,000 on day 5,000 is redeemable for 1 HEX. And on day 7,000 to 7,000 is redeemable for 1 HEX. And the market varies day to day with the ratios changing and what that discount is on the market. And so effectively people can buy off the market discounted HEX that will be worth a HEX in the future. And so that's just one of the many angles. And so as this has progressed now, HTT 4000s and 6000s have now been added. And so right now you can actually go mint HTT 4000s and 6000s. The pools are very small at the moment, just getting bootstrapped now. You know, so like the other tokens, we could look at that later, but I mean, they have a couple, you know, $120,000, $150,000 in liquidity with HEX for, you know, the 3,000 each, 3,000, 5,000, 7,000. And there's some undetermined amount. I didn't go calculate it on the old PHUX. So there is other liquidity out there as well. You know, so it's not being ignored at all. And so I'm going to try to start high level and kind of dig in a little bit as we go along. So that's where I'm at. So again, let's see what we got here in the chat before we get started. I see all you guys. Hey, Hexagon Lost in Asia, good to see you. Eddie, I had to smoke one on my own this week. All right. Lost in Asia says he's smoking one as well. Hollywood Benjamin says he likes Actuator, one of his favorite protocols. Frank White, always good to see you out there. Bring in the knowledge, stressful struggle. Bring in the knowledge. And Shell Fox, I see you. Yeah, we got to be positive, man. Hey, listen, stressful struggle. Yeah, you know, I'm not immune to all this stuff, right? I mean, you know, markets go down, markets go up, and we feel kind of shitty when they go down and better when it goes up. But I know people are talking about how things are different, and they might be different. It might be an elongated cycle or whatever. But looking at the charts and everything, it looks like a normal bull run. It's just longer. And people say, well, we're not really in a bull. Well, we're not in the parabolic bull run. But technically we've been in the bull run for a while, right? I mean, you could have bought the bottom and be up 5 or 6x on ETH and Bitcoin. And then somebody will say, well, wait a minute, but Pulsechain didn't do that. But you had lots of opportunity to sell high in Pulsechain. We just chose not to. And then, of course, now we're reacting to how it all interacts, and we just haven't come to that day yet. But the day will come eventually, I think. All right, stressful struggle. EHEX is king. Yeah, the EHEX had a pretty good couple weeks. You know, we did those buy signals, and they came in pretty good. Worked out pretty good for people. Yep, stressful struggle. I agree with you. I'm trying there, Yavine. We'll keep going. The replay people will come in for sure. All right, Hollywood Benjamin saying people are underestimating the staking protocol of Actuator. Yeah, I think so too. That's what I've been thinking. It's an asymmetrical bet. I mean, if HEX goes nuts, and therefore HEX stakes are very valuable, and people have the opportunity to stake their HEX and earn on top of it through protocols like this, I think the protocol will get used more. And because they're going to get used more, then there's more opportunity, right, within it. But it's asymmetrical, as in it hasn't happened yet, right? So, at least in my mind, like typically with I think I mentioned this already, with some sort of a reward token. It doesn't matter what it is. We talk about ink, sell it down, BBC, sell it down, 2FUCK, sell it down, right? I mean, all these things get sold down because that is how people are earning, and that's why they went into the protocol. So it's kind of expected. There isn't a lot of reason to stay sticky with this stuff, but Actuator, I think there is a reason, because I've actually earning HEX, future HEX already by having been in the Actuator vaults, but it's just not significant enough for people to go, oh, well, listen, I'm not going to sell, I'm going to hold. And of course, that just means that other people are accumulating it, right? So they're accumulating it while you sell yours. But selling it's not bad either. I mean, that's what you do with reward tokens, right? I mean, so yeah, not telling you what to do with it, but I mean, if you get it, I mean, you have a choice. You can sell it, try to get it cheaper later, or you could hold on to it, and then the bet is that it'll go up in value. Yeah, stressful struggle. You know, we did see a doubling of Quattro Cinco T-shares this month. I haven't done the final numbers because the month's not over yet, but twice as many as last month. So somebody's doing some work there. That's what I've been seeing, and we'll keep tracking it and see. But yeah, it falls off a cliff after the OA stakes end, and I think particularly for the younger folks that are out there, I say younger, but how about the ones that think they're going to live a very long time, that are going to be around or might be able to pass them along? It's really an opportunity. I think, again, it's another bet. That crypto will be around a long time, and so will HEX, right? And so getting these Quattro Cincos way out there in the future, you're not going to be able to get them later, right? I mean, even now, of course, the latest Quattro Cincos surpassed the Maxis and the Decis. Not that Maxi and Deci aren't good derivatives. They are, if you can get them at a discount for sure to NAV. They're good opportunity. But Deci hasn't renewed yet. We're not at the 10-year. And Maximus is, obviously not 15 years yet. So yeah, I mean, but those are out there as well. And then finally, I see Big Smoke, Actuator, loving the Actuator. And then Mr. Fast Abdul, he's here for the tech. And shout out to Fast for that stream with the Empress today on the old X. That was pretty entertaining. I liked that a lot. I liked it a lot. All right, so let's go ahead and dig in. We're going to dig into this information a little bit further. Reset my screen. I'm going to take the Fast Man off the screen. I'm going to bring this down. Let me go over to my presentation. Now, this thing, what we're going to talk about, I could do like 5 hours on this, right? I could do a long time on this. For some reason, I can't change my screen, so in the background, I'm trying to get back to it. I could do many hours on this thing. You might say, Crispy, why is that? Why do you keep saying that? How could you do so many hours about it? All right. Well, it's because there's a lot of detail in here. This is trying to fit a whole bunch of stuff into a thumbnail to kind of explain what it is. So I'm going to go really slow. So you can see on this this front screen, I do have the Actuator.finance site listed there. Make sure you're always checking your links and things are correct when you go out there. And you can see my depiction of HEX time tokens: 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, right? Those correspond to HEX days. not how many days something's been staked for, HEX days. And so on those days, there are redemption pools that have been set up. So people have delegated their HSIs and printed those specific tokens so that they will be redeemable on those days. Now, the reason for that is to give the community a target for LP. If this was like willy-nilly and we just had bunches and bunches, the liquidity might not be there for everybody, right? When they say, well, who chose these numbers? Well, these were pre-programmed numbers by the team, right? That's what they started with. Can I do my own? Yeah, you can go do your own, right? But what you end up with is a token that you printed, and now you got to go put it up in LP. And so there's some interesting dynamics there where you could actually go set that up in LP against HEX yourself, or you can go set it up against against other HTT tokens if you have them. That's kind of like an advanced topic. It's not like a beginner's topic, but yeah, I mean, what's today? 2026 is the HEX day. You could technically, go create a 7777 HTT. But in order to trade it, somebody's got to set up the liquidity, and that would be you, right? So it's an advanced kind of a topic to get into. And then perhaps other people would get involved with that because they want to follow along. I mean, there's some interesting things that could happen there. But let's go ahead and we're going to stick to the basics for now. And we'll talk about the 3s through the 6s through the 7s, thousands, and go to the next thing. All right, so what is this actuator thing? Really high level. It's transforming HEX into an ecosystem, a financial ecosystem. This is what I think can attract big money. Right, this is what I think can attract big money over the long term, and why I think that I'm willing to take a big risk. Not even a risk, really. Well, I guess on the actuator it is, but on the token itself, but on all the rest of it, one HTT is one HEX in the future, so that's not much of a risk by participating. But I'm willing to get involved and want to hold because I think big money can come into HEX. I think it's got really good product market fit, and I think if it's marketed into the future, it could be really cool, right? And be able to do that. So within this system, HEX stakes act as collateral. Right? There's rules around that. Again, lots of detail, about whether or not you're, what kind of stake you're putting up as collateral. Depends on, they have to be HSIs, but how long they are and what their expiration date, determines how many HTTs you can mint. The HTTs themselves are tradable bonds. So think T-share bonds, right? Tradable bonds or HEX bonds, right? I mean, I called them super bonds in the past. And then Actuator is a revenue sharing token. It's the revenue sharing token. So very high level, right? I mean, that's what we need to know. HTT stands for HEX time token, and the number after it is the redemption date. So really clear about that. Next. All right. Now, this is where some of you guys, I'm going to go back to a little bit less detail in a moment, but just to give you the idea of why I keep saying there's just a lot of information in here. A lot of these words are not part of my normal vocabulary. All right. Some of them make perfect sense to me. But these are the types of opportunities that Actuator is creating. And again, why I'm saying it's for the financial industry. Not to say that we can't participate, of course we can, but I mean, it's, people who really understand things like yield curve trading will understand this a lot better than me, and perhaps you. But things that are opportunities here, fixed rate HEX yields. We'll simplify the wording on this in a couple of minutes, but the idea that you can buy a discounted HEX today, it'll be one HEX in the future. And so you can actually have fixed rate yields. You know how much you're going to earn. That's pretty important to people. At least how much you're going to earn in HEX terms, right? Yield curve trading. right? This really has to do with people who are super smart, taking a look at the prices, determining whether, of HTTs, determining whether they're at a discount and a premium, and comparing that to other HTTs that are discount at premium and or HEX, and then doing trading along that curve to switch from from asset to asset in order to maximize their their yield. Again, trading isn't like something I'm normally involved in, right? So it's a little bit further down the curve, but there are some people that are going to be listening to this, right? And they're going to understand this. Arbitrage or mispricing. Well, we are using we are using DeFi, and people have the power to push buttons, right? So first off, you got the AMM effect, the automated market making effect, where it's using that constant product formula. So when action takes place on chain, you do see ratios shifting, right? We see it all the time. Then you have people. People sometimes maybe they just decide they're out of something, they want to get out, or they decide to go into something, and it creates these mismatches. So you have arbitrage opportunities. I'm going to show you an example of amplified exposure, where when you have that mispricing going on, perhaps you would, you'd go stake, print an HTT, immediately swap the HTT for HEX, and then go stake the HEX. And now you have even more HEX staked. It's amplification. And then finally, revenue participation. That's where the actuator vaults come in, where anybody who does decide to get into this thing and use the actuator protocol, well, every time they mint, they're paying the actuator vaults a little bit of the HTTs. So it's a little bit of an income there. All right. So let's now, I told you I was going to go back to a little bit less detail. This might make more sense to us. It made more sense to me. That's why I put it here. But these are 5 different categories, right? All right. So here are some strategies. Yield farming and liquidity farming is a strategy within this protocol. So you got actuator farms, you have vault staking. The actuator farms refers to when somebody puts HTTs up against HEX and they farm the LP token. The vault staking is the staking of actuator itself. Then you have bond-like trading, buying and selling HTTs along the curve. Remember, I just mentioned that with a whole bunch more words. This is this idea that, you're able to look at these prices and be like, yeah, hey man, that one's really cheap and this one's really expensive. So let me take the really expensive one and put it into the really cheap one. So you have that. Leverage and amplification, right? Well, that's again one of the examples I'll show, where you can take and go mint HTTs and recycle the proceeds into new stakes. Who doesn't want more HEX stakes, right? Arbitrage and market making, just a general, hey, I'm gonna, there seems like there's demand, between these particular assets. Let me see if I can be the one to provide the arbitrage and the market making. A lot of us don't get into this, but I mean, it's out there, and maybe some big money people. Again, let our imaginations run. I'm going to make up a number. I think it's less than $1 million right now. I think we're probably about 600,000, 700,000 involved in actuator protocol at the moment. Well, let's just assume it's at $1 million. What's 1 million times 100? 100 million, right? So in the future, this little ecosystem's 100 million ecosystem, right? At 500x, it's a 500 million ecosystem. All of a sudden, you could see where maybe somebody would be super interested in being involved in this niche, because it's a lot bigger. It's a lot bigger dollars in that case. All right. Portfolio hedging and diversification. Well, this has more to do with like strategy, right, for people. But the idea that you can diversify into some other things with your HEX. I mean, when you have, there's a lot of people holding their HEX liquid. You're sure maybe some of them, diversified into LPX or something, or or whatever. But I mean, this is another way to do that with your HEX, to do something with that HEX, right? Staking the HEX, of course, I recommend that, right? But a lot of people don't want to do it because it's locked up. But with the HTTs, you have access, and it gives you that flexibility, at least some of the liquidity that's tied up in there. And you do have the ability to earn on that next 2 years. You know, to earn the actuator. Of course, I already mentioned the actuator farming. So there's that. All right. So what are some of the plays? Now, these we're going to go by named groups. Named groups. Just guys give you again some more detail into this thing. But we'll go by named groups of people, like for stakers, people who admit what's in it for them, right? That's what people want to know. What's in it for them, right? Let's see. I think I got one comment in here. I see you out there, Corey. How are you? Motorcycle riding in the rain, maybe. I don't know. It's been raining like hell here. It's worth not extracting all your HTTs from a HEX stake right away. You may be thankful later to DCA out HTTs from the stakes as price appreciates. Yeah. See, that's just another one of those strategies, Hollywood, right? Because, right, it could be, you could have these HTTs in, or I shouldn't say HTTs, but these HSIs in. Price goes nuts on HEX. HTTs are primarily driven by HEX pools. With no action from people buying and selling, HTTs appreciate at the same rate as HEX. HEX goes up 100x, HTTs go up 100x. So now you have a token out there, you know, subject to price impacts and slippage, blah, blah, blah. But now you have a token out there that you can go mint one of these tokens and take a profit. And so I've heard people talk about strategies where they're like, yeah, I'm going to do this at the top, right? I'll put my, I'll get my stake in there. I'll print my HTTs. I'll sell the HTTs at the top, assuming you could do that, right? And then I'll buy them back at the bottom, right? So that's another strategy. So there's a lot of, and there's probably 6 other ways to explain that and kind of work on it. All right, so you have instant liquidity. This is for stakers. Instant liquidity, you're able to monetize a portion of your stake without exiting it. It's still your stake. It's still your stake. You can come back, redeposit your HTTs at any time. You have rolling liquidity, and that's kind of what you were mentioning a little bit, Hollywood, about this idea of periodically minting against the stake as it accrues new rewards, right? Over time, you can pop a few more out. Leverage play, you can use amplified stakes to increase HEX exposure. That's one of the examples I'll go through. That's where if an HTT is super expensive on the market, you go print it and then swap immediately into HEX, go stake more HEX. It provides an exit strategy. So if you really wanted to offload your value early, you could, but you still have until the redemption date to come back and buy the HTTs and put them back in. And then what they call fee recapture, which is stake. You can stake your actuator in the vaults, and you'll earn, if you have actuator, you'll earn those HTTs, and then you can use that to offset the cost of the minting. So there's that. All right, so for stakers, these are actuator plays. Now let's switch to buyers and traders. This is you know, obviously something that's necessary on our within our ecosystem. People are trading, right? I mean, you can't have crypto without trading. Even if you don't believe in trading, somebody's trading. So for buyers and traders, you have the fixed rate HEX yield. You can buy HTTs at a discount. You know that they're going to be worth a HEX later, right? Based on the the current rate of return, the APR that we see on HEX stakes, we can approximate the value of what, how much a HTT should be discounted, right? And so some are expensive and some are cheap. And when they're really, really cheap, you can buy them on the market, and you actually, at any point, you'll see it right on the screen. But at that discount, you lock in, you're getting a guaranteed return on HEX. So we're going to make up some numbers, but currently, if I do a Quattro Cinco, I'm going to earn 5% a year, and that is not compounded. Roughly doing a rough number. Things could change in the future. People could do more staking, less staking, whatever. But right now, kind of around number 5%. Well, if you're getting the HTTs a significant amount of discount, you could be earning 6, 7, 8, 10%. And so now in terms of HEX, right? And so again, we may not be super impressed by that at the current prices, but at 100x, 200x, 500x, that could be quite enticing, right? And so we'll have to wait, obviously, and watch, participate, learn as we go along. But I mean, there's a lot of new stuff that can come from this, I think, and a lot of opportunity. And again, it kind of goes back to my thesis that this could end up being a magnet for people who understand, a little bit better than I do, the financial instruments we're talking about, how to utilize them, right? And all of it benefits HEX. All right. Relative value plays. This we're talking about the the HTTs versus HEX and each other. You might be able to swap from those depending on what's happening on the market. I mean, again, other people are participating, so you're reacting to that. Before that was the yield curve trading, speculating on which direction the curves are going to go. And like when I talked to C3 Works Bill from Actuator, he's got a pretty expert knowledge on this. Like, this is not my area of expertise, so I'm still learning what he means when he's talking about it. But you can go look up the definitions are there. I mean, whether you go to their site or just go look up yield curve trading, right? But you're just speculating what's going to happen with one asset versus another. I mean, perhaps opportunities present themselves when we start getting close to day 3000. Versus HTT 3000 versus other tokens, and there are ways to lock in or earn on that curve. Cycle positioning, right? So if we've mentioned this before too, but I mean, if I mint HTTs now, I sell them at the top. Well, I can accumulate discounted HTTs during the bear, and then redeem them in the bull. Wash, rinse, repeat. Yeah, HEX farmer. I know I'm talking crazy talk about selling at the top, buying at the bottom. I know. And then finally, liquidity provisioning. At least this next 2 years, there are opportunities to earn actuator emissions by seeding the pools, which then you can in turn put in the vaults, or you could just sell off as an income. Later, the incentive presumably will be that this will be a much bigger ecosystem, and providing the LP is profitable, right? Now, somebody did ask about getting these into the LPXs in the chat. I think that in the future, yeah, we'll definitely be evaluating. I mean, I would evaluate whether I had enough to do that with, or somebody set up a pool, whether I do it. I think it'd be very good possibility to support the Actuator token. But remember, within this ecosystem, there's some other unique ecosystems like this too. There are specific purposes for the HTTs, right? You earn on the HTTs by putting them into LP with HEX, and then farm in the LP, right? Well, if it's in the LPX, you can't do that. So they're kind of like, opposing goals. The same thing with the Actuator. I guess if a person had enough of the Actuator, they could decide to do both. But you know, an individual would have to decide, do they want to earn on the price of the actuator and therefore go into LPX to support the actuator price and potentially earn, or do they want to earn HTTs? So there's some different things, different ways that could be handled. All right. Next up, who are we going to have next? We did stakers, we did buyers and traders. Okay, for actuator holders. And I did tell the chat guys I would talk about this today and give it a little bit more review. For actuator holders, right? Revenue share, right? So if you're an actuator holder, of course, I already mentioned a bunch of people do sell it, right? It's, you know, treat it like a reward token, but you can deposit it. Vault depositors earn HTTs from creations of new HTTs. It gives you a little bit of diversified exposure, right? Because you can pick the HTT you want. Let's say you printed, you know, HTT 7000, minted your own from your own stakes. You have that up as collateral. Well, you can accumulate actuator and put it into the vault to earn the HTT 7000. So you have more HTT 7000s to use to pay back your stake before the redemption date. So you have that opportunity, right? And then deflationary upside, you know, people who do lock up their actuator, they emergency end stake it. It's not called that, but they do it early. They burn actuator. So it is after the third year, actuator becomes a deflationary token. Now it's not for sure, but the team has been talking about other ways to make it deflationary. So yeah, so those are those first three types of people. And then this probably doesn't apply to most of us, but remember, when the dollars get bigger, this becomes more advantageous. But for ARBs and market makers, there is going to be opportunity to provide LP between these. Again, thinking in the future, Pulsechain super popular, HEX super popular and successful, Actuator super popular, prices are through the moon. Well, all of a sudden, this is a much tastier, you know, set of goals. Being able to do cross HTT arbitrage between HEX and the HTTs, you know, actively working on the discounts. This might be more in the form of something we might talk about with LPX, you know, and then currently through the end of year 3, you do have the liquidity incentive to capture actuator from farming, right? So just some of the ways. All right. Whew, we made it this far. Let's see if anybody's awake. You guys have questions, drop them in there before I get into a couple examples. I think these examples are pretty cool that we'll go over. It's just 2 of them, so it's probably like another 10 minutes worth of a stream. Just looking to see what else anybody else has going on here in the chats. This detailed stuff is hard to get through. You know, I've been working on an actuator now 6-7 months, right, to understand it. It's not that it's that hard. I mean, if you guys stick to the easy stuff, like, you know, my opening slides, first 2, you know, you're like, oh, that's what actuator is. HTTs are bonds. Got it. Right. You can kind of move on from there. You don't necessarily have to dig into this kind of level of detail. All right. So I don't see any new questions came in. Let's see. We got one last comment here. As a strategy, is it better to, I assume, stake Q4 than any other time of the year? I don't know. Yeah, I've kind of, I can understand doing yearly stakes, just kind of like in general, and kind of negates the need to actually time it out, because like if you did every January or something like that, you're always getting some sort of a rebound. But yeah, when we look at the T-share rates going up, typically at the end of the year, it goes up faster. But that presumes that whoever's got the stakes they're going to make the changes would do it. That they're going to actually end their stakes and the changes go up faster. But in general, people kind of leaned in that direction. So we do see that the T-share rate goes up, I think, faster in that November-December timeframe. And so therefore, September, you can make an argument September, October is a optimum time to get staked. But then there's a lot of us that are like quarterly, other people that are still doing monthly. I personally, and even though I don't have a full ladder that's monthly, I personally prefer monthly. I started out yearly, quarterly, and then ended up monthly. It just made me feel better. I don't know, emotional type of thing. All right, let's see. NJ Dubson, I remember when it first came out, super intimidating. Yeah, it took me probably weeks to understand the dashboard. Yeah. I think so too. Yeah, Hollywood. Yeah, the shark or whale position. I believe a shark position right now is just 1 million actuator. Total supply is 1 billion with a B. BN 1 billion. It's around $250 for a shark position, I believe, at the moment, and whales around 25. I don't remember the exact price, but around 2,500. But the liquidity is kind of thin, and so if you are looking to take a position, slow and steady wins the race. Try to keep your price impact below 5%. That type of thing. Unless you just don't care, you want to wing it and just go boom and send it up. But we've seen that happening with the actuator token. HTTs kind of self-regulate, but I'm going to show you in this example why they self-regulate and why there's an opportunity right there now. But the actuator looks like it might have bottomed. It looks like it's kind of bottomed out, but. And then Eddie, kind of a add on to your strategy. Yep. You can say that Bitcoin always tops in Q4, but don't know if that'll ever change. So again, kind of that thesis about September, October. If everything follows that, you'd be okay, right? I mean, we saw what 18 was January top. Right. So yeah, a little bit of crossover. But if we ever see the cycle change, might be left out to dry on timing at all. And then Hollywood saying, yeah, with those actuator tokens, you put them in the vault. Think of all the HTTs you can earn. Yeah, it could be quite substantial. See, right now, again, with the level of activity on the Pulsechain, right, might not all be there, but at much higher levels of activity and dollar values, all of a sudden could be a lot of value coming with those HTTs. Right. We'll try to explain. I'm just going to go over. I've got a list of like 10 different strategies, but they get into way too much detail for a late night type of stream. Right? So let me go full screen on you guys. Never go full screen, but I'm going to go full screen. That's my sense of humor. All right, so we mentioned a couple times this idea of actuator fixed rate hex yield, and how much that's doing. And I do not have theirs. I probably should use their site, but to be able to show this. But this is a little table that I put together for the different HTT tokens and what they're, how many years to the redemption, right? 7,000 the longest, 3,000 the shortest. Notice that 3,000s can be redeemed in about 2.5 years, 2.4 years. Well, that's because it's hex day 3,000, not 3,000 day stakes, right? So these are redemption days. When you look at the benchmark discount, this is me just assuming Quattro Cinco is the benchmark, roughly earning 5%. So what should the discount be? What would I expect the discount to hex be? And that's the 3,000s at 11, 4,000 at 22, 5,000 at 32, 6,000 at 60, and 7,000 at 48. Those should be the discounts. And so the mispricing is when we look at the market, the actual market discount. Now, this could have changed the last few minutes, right? Last hours, because I made this slide a little bit earlier today. But the discounts are different, right? Let's go to 7,000s. Pretty close, right? 48% versus 49.5%. Not a huge opportunity either direction, though, right? Now, the other four tokens, we have, 3,000s market discount to benchmark is greater. The market discount is greater. You can get it cheaper than the benchmark. 4,000s, right? Market discount is less than the benchmark, so it's more expensive. 5,000s cheaper. 6,000s expensive. And then again, we 7,000 pretty close. They were fairly close, price wise, right? So then this creates these opportunities, and we're going to look at both of them. One of them I don't have another slide on, but because it's just simply this. Hey, listen, right now HTT 3000s are cheap. They're cheap, right? So it's at a much higher discount than it should be. So what you should be able to do is go pick up HTT 3000s and make a reasonable additional profit instead of staking the HEX. That's kind of what this means. So you're buying the HTT off the market. If you go to their website, it'll actually show you the APR written up and the length of time, etc. But you earn just a little bit more. So 8.2% versus 5% APR, but you're locking that in immediately, right? Just by having swapped for the HTT 3000s. And then on the 5,000, same type of thing. Cheap right now, you can lock in about an 8% APR versus the 5% for staking, and it'll be held over a longer period of time. So you're locking in 8% for nearly 8 years, while we don't know what's going to happen with the HEX stakes themselves, right? But it's at around 5% right now. So when you go to their website, now let me pull it up because it'll make sense, because you won't see my chart again. So it'll make better sense if you see it this way. Let me pull up their chart on the screen just to show you how they're calculating how that's of value. Boom. Let's go to the Actuator dashboard. It's a very complicated dashboard. I'm sorry, guys. I apologize for that. But try to focus in on this section over here where it says HEX time tokens. And it has the listings of each of the tokens. And we were talking about the 3000s and the 5000s. Well, all right. So right now, an HTT 3000 is discounted to HEX at 16.4%. So when you look at the total return, you're automatically getting, on the swap, you're getting a 19% return, right? It's just in the future. You're just not getting it now, but you're giving yourself this 19% return. And if you do the calculations on the APR over the 2.4 years, it gives you an 8.21% APR, greater than what you can get by the staking of the HEX natively or through an HSI. And so in this way, one of the angles people could take is they say, well, whenever they're cheap and I'm going to do better, then maybe I'll pick up HTT, 3000s, and I'm locking in a 20% return. For the HTT 5000s, they're running at a 38% discount. 38% discount. And that's generating a total return of 63.75% over about 8 years. And when you do the math on that, that comes out to be 8%. And so 8% APR is greater than 5%, better deal. Okay, so this is the game, right? Is that people who are monitoring these tokens, they see that somebody sold them for cheap. Doesn't matter why they did. You don't have to understand why people would sell them. You just need to know that there was an opportunity. You can get the HTTs cheap, and you're going to guaranteed to get more HEX later. And you see it right on the screen. This is like when they say when you make your money on the buy. When we talk about real estate, you make the money on the buy. Well, this is where you're making the units on the buy, because you know exactly how many units you're going to have, right? If you get 100,000 HTT 5000s and they're discounted, at 38%, which is pretty steep, that 100,000 is 100,000 HEX in the future. So you is very predictable. And for somebody who's trying to manage big money and be able to show this to their clients and be able to report on it and prove that you did what you're supposed to do, as a manager, this is the kind of stuff people need to see. So again, I'll tell you, I'm bullish about it because I think this is, a lot of us will look at it and go, oh, this is literally kind of creepy, crazy, don't need this. But there's a whole world of people that do this for a living, right? And so perhaps just because I'm not interested in it doesn't mean other people aren't going to be interested in it. And it could be quite a big thing when it comes to big money, particularly, again, with the belief that these systems and our chain go off the hook, right? That could become very lucrative. Yo, Randy, good to see you, buddy. All right. I saw somebody posting today about staying crispy, man. And, I never knew that was like a real saying. I thought it was funny to say it because it was kind of like, I was never in like, I guess it would be Army that would have been the ones that would walk around and say, stay frosty, right? Like head on a swivel, 5x5, all that kind of stuff. Right? I was Navy, so we didn't really talk that way, but I thought it was funny to start saying stay crispy. Then I realized it was like a real slang saying. Stay crispy. It's a good saying, though. Good one. All right. So ad nauseum, I think we can kind of dispense with this example. Bottom line is this, guys. Prices vary in DeFi based on what people do. And because it's varying, there's opportunities sometimes where you can get things cheap. And when you do that, you can actually lock in earnings over the future because we know that the HEX contract's immutable and one HEX is one HEX, and you're going to get the HEX at the end, right? By redeeming it. The rest of it has to do with price appreciation, etc. Right? So again, viable financial instrument here. All right, so that's one big example that we cite quite a bit because it's one of the biggest opportunities, right? Is you might be someone who has HEX, you're not willing to stake it for whatever reason right now, but you could swap it for HTTs. And when you swap it for the HTTs, you're locking in more HEX into the future without staking. So maybe it's a no-brainer for some people to diversify that way. And the HTTs are getting a similar exposure, which gives you more optionality. They're getting similar exposure to the HEX price. Not full because, of course, they're smaller pools overall. But you have that opportunity because you have these things, right, to potentially be utilizing them instead of HEX. All right, so this is just one way to look at this, and then let's go to make you guys small on the screen. All right, this is much more complicated, but we're going to focus not on all the words. You can read the words if you want. Go ahead. But we're going to focus on this little diagram on the right hand side, right? So you know how we were just talking about some of the HTTs being cheap? Well, what if the HTTs are expensive? What if they're expensive? What if they're expensive? Or, somebody bought a bunch for some reason. Right now, that's the situation with the 4s and the 6s, right? Somebody bought a bunch because it's limited LP and somebody wants some. They go buy them and they didn't print. Well, now you have a different situation. When you see that a HTT is overpriced, you can go stake HEX or use a stake you already have. Mint HTTs, mint the one that's overpriced. You immediately swap the HTTs for more HEX, and then you can stake the HEX again for Collateral, right? And get more HTTs. To pay yourself back if you want to, or you could just stake it, and now you have a stake for the future. Like somebody was saying earlier, you could harvest later, but now you have 2 stakes. And if they're spread out over time, you might have daisy chains, leapfrogs of stakes that can actually pay off the debt of the previous one, etc. And then when the time comes, however it comes, you buy back your HTTs cheap later, and then you stake the HEX again, right? So you could, or whichever way you want to do it, but you could do it that way as well. And so just like completing this little cycle. Now I think we actually call out the numbers in this one. So we were just looking at the numbers a few minutes ago, right? We're seeing that the 4,000s and the 6,000s are they're expensive. And so that would be an opportunity. So I think this is probably as detailed as we should go for this stream. But I think there's lots of opportunity within the Actuator system for all of us, right? So I think if we get a hankering, go take a look at their website, actuator.finance. They're good people. I think there's a good opportunity for this thing to take off. I don't know that it will. There's no guarantees in crypto, but it can't fail. So what I mean by that is, well, the only way anybody printed any HTTs is they had to put up collateral. And so if you own HTTs, you can redeem them, for the HEX. If you bought them on the market, you redeem them for the HEX. So as a failure vector, I mean, it's there. It's going to be working no matter what. Question is how much adoption? And the asymmetrical bet is going to be that's going to be like heavy adoption, right? Lots of people are going to get involved. Randy, I love this. This is very good, man. Very good. Now is the time to buy anything on Pulsechain you believe in. Dude, I had that, I don't think you're in my chat all the time, but I had that kind of shower thought today. Units are king, guys. Units are king. Most of the problems that I observe people having when we hit tops or even local tops, they're unwilling to sell because they don't want to lose their units. You want to lose your units. But if you got enough units, you don't have to worry about losing them. Well, when can you get more units? When they're really, really cheap and you don't care about them as much, right? When $100 buys you 100,000 instead of 10,000, And so, yeah, I know we're all exhausted, but Randy's exactly right. I mean, everything I'm seeing on my indicators, I have indicators coming in now to my signal chat. The signals are saying, hey, listen, now's a good time to accumulate. Like ink is like on a huge opportunity to accumulate, right? Looking at all the core tokens, accumulate. Is it a guarantee? No. But are they cheap? Yes. We were really early in the cycle. Yes, for 30% progress towards blow off tops. You got to do what you got to do, right? I mean, if you don't have the value, you don't have the value, and nobody should risk anything that's going to hurt their 4 walls. But in my opinion, right? But yeah, now's the time. But it's been, you say that, but it's been a long 4 years. It's been a long time. Even I'm not sure I'm happy to extend this out another year and a half, but I don't get to control that either. Hollywood Benjamin, thank you very much for the super chat. Super chat, yeah. $9.99 fire stream, crispy. It's been it's been a good topic, man. I like this topic. And I'm not seeing enough about the Actuator out there. and which only makes me a little bit more bullish about it. But and again, like I said, I don't represent the team, so it's me sharing my observations, my learning. Now, I did get some of my learnings from them, so and I appreciate that. Big shout out to that team, because I know it took me a while, and I faded like Actuator for 6 months. I was like, because I did the same thing everybody else did. I was looking at the website, and I was staring at it, and like, why don't I understand any of this? But I mean, I can understand the elements. You read a word, I can understand the word. You show me a little snippet, I can understand. But I wasn't putting it all together. It was like, well, why would I want to have different HTTs? Why do I want to have different dates? This doesn't make sense. But I'm not from that world of traditional finance, and they are, right? And so they're creating a product market fit for HEX, using HEX as the collateral, and I like that because I like HEX. And then once I began to understand a little bit better about it, kind of gripped me a little bit better. But I think we have this opportunity. Probably won't be for everybody. I don't think it's really directed for us. I mean, for, as a general statement, but there are a lot of people that are involved right now with, with getting everything lined up and bootstrapped in, right? So that's what's happening right now. And so I like this opportunity. I like it. All right, I don't see any other things in the chat, so we'll finish off with Ram or Ram. I don't know. I think it might be Ramless. But the universe says LFG. Bye. Yep. Go big or go home, right? That's what we're saying. All right. So again, folks, listen, I know this one's a little bit deep. This is about an hour stream, and I didn't even get into detail. And I tried my best to try to explain this, some of the things I'm seeing. I think there's some opportunity. I think for you whales that are out there and sharks that might be seeing this is something you should probably look into, at least to understand. The rest of us, I think, we have opportunities to do the farming and the actuator vaults and to earn and to participate, right? Now, I never say never. I mean, we could all get involved, but just understand, take a little bit of time to get up to speed with it. And we'll go from there. So you guys drop questions into, you do it on X, or you do it here on YouTube after the stream, or you can head over to the actuator.finance site, go into their Telegram and ask your questions there. People be happy to answer. Watch out for anything bogus. Somebody send you like fake links. I'm not going to put the Telegram link in here, but there's no entry of seeds anywhere. You don't need your seed phrases or anything like that. You go look at this information on actuator.finance. All right. There's no funky websites or anything like that to go to. Just their funky website, which is linked right off of actuator.finance. And I see the dark man himself, Pulse Ray Vision. How you doing? Ashley B. Good to see you too. All right, folks, we're going to wrap it. So you guys stay crispy. I'll be back again. I was kind of thinking maybe I'll do a weekly actuator stream, just do an update on things. But we'll see. If there's enough interest, I will do that. And with that, we're going to go out. See ya. It always takes me a minute to, a few seconds to push the outro.